And then again, today we want to talk about the Amendatory 3 that includes the North Side project and the elimination of the Ohio Canal Interceptor Tunnel Treatment Facility. Just real quick, summarize some of the awards that we've received over the last few years, and we're very, very proud of these. Our mayor actually got an award from the state of Ohio, from the Ohio Water Environment Association for his efforts in regards to the environmental projects at Akron. And we've gotten awards for our communications that we've provided to our stakeholders and to the public and for our events we've had, and also engineering achievement awards for the projects themselves. A little bit of history. I don't want to spend very much time on this at all, but obviously we did have a consent decree that really got started back in 2009. It wasn't entered until January of 2014 in the court, and we still have the same completion date of October 2027. It does require 0 untreated overflows in what we call the typical year or average year, and it requires no secondary bypass at the water reclamation facility. And as the mayor noted, it is one of the most stringent consent decrees in the country. We went through the integrated planning process back in 2015. Of these, some 800 combined sewer overflow communities in the U.S., US EPA was finally realizing that every one of these projects were greatly exceeding their original cost estimates, and the majority of them were required additional time. US EPA actually came up with a process called integrated planning to review these projects, to hopefully make them more cost-effective, more environmentally beneficial, and to help ease some of the financial burden. Through that integrated planning process, we've come up with, up to this point, really 3 changes to the consent decree. One we call Exhibit 3, which is actually was included in the consent to allow us to incorporate some sewer separation and some green infrastructure projects. And then the First and Second Amendment provided us to rearrange some of the schedules, come up with alternative projects to save money. And specifically, the Second Amendment required us to incorporate green infrastructure, specifically out in East Akron, in the Middlebury neighborhood. That resulted really in some fantastic projects out there that not only eliminated having to build construction of storage tanks, but allowed us to really do what I think are community improvements and enhancements with the green infrastructure. I like this little chart. I've used this a lot. I know you've seen it before, but it gives a nice comparison of the projects that we've actually changed through the integrated planning process. The original consent decree required 5 separation projects, 10 storage tanks, 2 tunnels, improvements at the water reclamation facility, improvements at our mud run pump station, which is our largest pump station in southwest Akron, an alternative project to the main outfall where we actually repaired the sewer versus building a parallel sewer, and then that Ohio Canal Tunnel Treatment Facility. Through the integrated planning process, we still did the 5 sewage separation projects. They were pretty much underway. Some of them were actually already completed. We did modify 5 of the storage tanks and provided green additional conveyance and sewer separation projects. And if you're not quite familiar what green infrastructure means, I've got some pictures on later to kind of show you what those projects look like. Obviously, we did the Ohio Canal Tunnel. It's complete. The right side, north side tunnel is part of this third amendatory that we're talking about. We did 2 projects at the water reclamation facility. We actually changed the schedule of the step feed project, and we replaced and provided with a different technology at an improved cost, a lower cost, to treat the wet weather flow. Mud run pump station was already well underway before we did the integrated plan. We did replace the main outfall with the main outfall cap, and its active flow is again the third amendatory under review. So these are the 2 projects that are left or under review as part of the third amendment. And this gives you a quick update then on where we are with all the projects. The green ones are the integrated planning projects, and the black ones show the projects that were part of the original consent decree. And you can see the vast majority have been completed. It does show we're finishing up the second phase of one project down in Memorial Parkway. And we do then have the tunnels in design and the active flow is in plan. As the mayor mentioned, we've saved around $150 million in capital costs with the two amendments. And what I'm really proud of is our staff has been able to work with the Highway PA to come up with actual financial savings by getting this unbelievably low interest rates for all kinds of different criteria in order to save approximately $142 million just in financing. And we hope with this latest amendment we could save around $140 to $150 million with these future projects. And then I'll give you a constant reference back. We started at 2.4 billion and now we're talking about 100 million gallons of overflow. Graphically, this shows what it looks like. We've completed, again, 84% of the projects. We've got one that's still under construction. And a huge price tag on the remaining 8% of the projects, or 2 projects. And it's kind of like in life, you start out doing the projects with the biggest bang for the buck. So a lot of the earlier projects removed a lot more flow. And now we're left with the more difficult 2 projects that don't remove as much flow, and there's not quite as much cost effectiveness when it gets to these last 2 projects. And again, graphically to show the volume of overflow that's been eliminated. We've eliminated 93% of the CSO and secondary bypass, and we're down to just the 7% remaining. We have kept with our mission, basically to invest in Akron's future for future generations, to protect public health and provide the highest quality of water quality, and also creating local jobs. Not only have the local jobs been created through contractors, but also with our consultant community. They also have goals for local hires and have been tremendously successful in accomplishing that. I'm very quickly going to run through some of the projects to give you, again, that update. And I'm going to go through these real quick. One of the sewer separation projects that we've done, and kind of gives you an idea of the dates when the projects were done and also the cost with these projects. One thing I do want to point out with this project, if you look at the upper right corner, it shows a sewer liner actually going into the sewer. And we've done a tremendous amount of lining in a lot of our sewers in Akron. And what it does is it puts this liner inside, then they harden that liner with the resins and with hot water and steam, and allows you to basically have a brand new sewer without having to dig up the street. And in the bottom right, obviously you know what it looks like when we have to dig up the street. With this lining process, we can actually do it from manhole to manhole and really reduce the amount of disruption that occurs doing these separation projects. This is the mud run pump station. Not only do we improve the pump station, but we also provided for storage of any potential overflow. This was that sewer where we were able to go down and tap the sewer down in the Merriman Valley along Riverview Road. And this was actually one of our earliest projects that benefit from the integrated planning process, where we saved a tremendous amount of money and also completed the project over a year early. Merriman Separation Green was one of our first green projects, and very, very successful. Basically, we ended up with this picture in the top right corner instead of a concrete tank, and we're really proud of this. The stormwater, as you can see, people always ask, yeah, that's pretty, what's it look like when it fills with stormwater? The bottom right picture shows you what it looks like when it fills with stormwater, but all of the plantings that are inside where it gets submerged, those plantings can withstand being submerged for a day or 2. And this, this had been submerged several times, and it still looks fantastic, and it shows you how when it's actually operating. And keep in mind that was instead of a concrete tank. We are really proud of this project in Middlebury neighborhood, down in Arlington and in the East Market. We actually built a wetland in the middle of town. We had to tear down a few buildings that weren't really desirable, and we actually created a wetland inside these walls with the amount of water that's needed to be maintained in there, along with the proper soil and the proper vegetation. And the bottom left shows you a little idea of what it looks like when it is being used for stormwater storage. But again, we actually created a wetland in the middle of the city, which the flowers and the growth is fantastic, provides a great haven for the birds and the bees and the honeymakers in East Akron. Just truly a great project. Cascade Village is one of our circular tanks, and they actually clean this tank using automated water cannons along the top that are actually controlled to optimize how they wash the tank. And we did a great job, I think, communicating with the neighborhood in this one. Obviously, there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood where this tank was constructed. We actually put construction monitors in the community center. So to kind of avoid some of the curiosity of people as to what's going on back there, and to keep the kids from their being curious as to what's going on, they could just go into the community center and see exactly what's going on. And it also allowed the parents and the people in the community center to know if anybody was monkeying around in the facility. But again, one of our earlier projects, one of our smaller basins. Forge Field, another one of the basins where we had to cross the river in order to get the flow into the tank. And on this one, I want to point out, this picture was taken after the tanks had been used multiple times. And because of our flushing systems and the way we clean these out within a day, we aren't required to cover them. And because we clean them out so quickly and so efficiently, we really have very little odor that ever comes from any of these facilities. One of our larger facilities, Brook, east side of town. One thing I love about this one too is not only it's a big giant concrete tank, but along with this project, we were able to restore the stream, Brook. And we created pockets of wetlands alongside. You can't go out there without seeing wild turkeys and deers and those kind of things running around in that property. Howard Basin on Howard and Calhoun Street. This one, because of the potential development in that area, we were very, very critical of making sure we landscaped it properly. And you can see the landscaping. If you're driving down Calhoun Street, I don't think you even know that this facility is there. Hazel was recently completed towards the end of last year. This is the only facility that we actually have to pump into with stormwater. The facility, in order to get the flow in, was just getting too deep in the ground. So we went with the Archimedes screws in order to pump into the tank during the higher flows. Euler, instead of building a storage tank, we were actually able to provide additional capacity in the sewer and build a serial crossing. Again, one of the great things about this project, there was a crossing in the river that caused like a little low-head dam that was detrimental to water quality. Doing this project, we were able to eliminate that little dam in the river, and we were actually able to increase the floodplain in the area to improve the river. There was severe erosion along the banks. By increasing this floodplain, it's reduced and almost eliminated the erosion, and it's allowed for fish passage now through here without the little low-head dam in there. Memorial Aqueduct, this was Akron's, I believe, first complete green street. This is part one of a two-part project, and this is the one that's still under construction. The aqueduct portion has been completed, but right now we're finishing up on Memorial Parkway with completing the connection for RAP 26, and then later in the year, we just did a project to do the storm sewer for RAP 28. So that project will be done this summer, and it'll complete this portion of this project. Kelly Conveyance just really came out fantastic. Again, in lieu of storage tanks out in this area, we were able to separate some of the sewers and capture some of the stormwater and create rain gardens and vegetated swales. And all these projects have themes to them for East Akron. This one is actually a butterfly. We've got another one that's actually a footprint, like a rubber sole. And we've got this one is a fish that floats along. This is the butterfly. This one is actually spells out in Morse code, Middlebury, and does a great connection of the neighborhood to the school. But these just really came out fantastic, and I'm really curious to see. This is what they look like after the second year. I'm curious to see what they look like after the third year. And I think everybody's aware the Ohio Canal Tunnel was completed back in June of 2020. Been very successful in operating. It's exceeded our our initial estimates on how much flow can be captured in the system as far as overflows, and we're learning how to operate this thing more efficiently every time we have an event. And it just shows you the idea of the depth of the tunnel. I did want to point out, this one's a little different than the north side project we're talking about now, is that this tunnel not only went through rock, but it also went through soft soil and dirt. And it made it a very, very challenging project to have to go through both soil and rock. The north side project should almost all be in rock, which will make it a much more cost-effective project. I love this picture. It's taken inside the diversion structure. Here's the tunnel right here. And how often do you get the mayor and EPA officials inside a tunnel and they're all smiling? This happens to be, when I've got the pointer right now, is the director of Ohio EPA. And this is the person now in charge of all the financial funding for Ohio EPA in regards to their water pollution control loan fund. But it was great to get them down and get them a tour of our project. And I really think it went a long way to getting their support on our third amendment that we're asking for right now. Our water reclamation facility, we had a large project down there, and the bottom right picture shows, and those of you who haven't been down there, we need to get you down there for a tour. But when you drive down the Akron Peninsula and you see the tanks with all the bubbles and aeration going on, really what I like to call this is just a wetland on steroids. So it's using what nature does to treat wastewater by providing oxygen into the stream. It provides a biomass that actually eats and digests the pollutants as they come in. And there's just thousands and thousands of little organisms in here that are actually doing the job of treating the wastewater. Initially, this is what the plant setup was. Basically an overview, 280 million gallons would come into the plant. We could treat 110 of that with this biological secondary process, which is that wetland I was talking about. And then we would recombine the flow, disinfect, and discharge 280. What this improving the secondary treatment process allows us now to get 220 through with biological treatment, which leaves only 60 million gallons that bypasses the secondary. So when I say secondary bypass, that's what this is in red. So it's not bypassing the whole system, it's more of an internal bypass. But we were required to provide biological treatment then of that 60 million gallons that would bypass this secondary treatment. Here's the cost of that project. It was finished up a couple years ago, over $43 million, and it really involved reconstruction of this entire middle area of the facility. The BioSep project then was just completed the end of last year, again treating the 60 million gallons a day with a high rate treatment. BioSep stands for chemically enhanced primary treatment, which is really just a faster way to use chemical to provide treatment of this during extremely high flows. And here it shows it just as it's being finished with construction. This shows what it kind of looks like inside the tank. So this actually provides biological treatment and settling all in one tank at a very high rate, much higher rate than what the secondary process does. And there's an aerial view of the completed project. And one thing I want to note about those two projects, we basically had the middle of the plant all torn up for a couple years. We had the end of the plant all torn up for a couple years, and now we're working on the headworks. The water reclamation facility staff and operators have done a phenomenal job of operating the plant. During all this construction, the plant still had to maintain compliance with its permit. And they just did a fantastic job of working around the construction to make sure that the wastewater was still properly treated before it discharged into the river. And I can't say enough about their abilities to work with our contractor to make sure the plant stayed operational. One of the last project that I wanted to mention in regards to the consent decree projects that are completed is part of a supplemental environmental project in the original consent decree. We assisted in the removal of the Brecksville 82 dam, and this shows the dam being removed. And what this did was eliminate the dam that was out there and allow us fish passage through this area and into Akron. And they're already finding significant numbers of fish that are finding their ways in the Cuyahoga River, into the Cascade Valley Park, and up the Little Cuyahoga River, right into downtown Akron. Are fish that just in the past could not get there because of this dam that was there. So through this dam removal, it's improved the water quality in the city of Akron. And here's a little before and after picture of what it looked like with the dam and without the dam. Talk about construction projects, updates. Again, there's only a couple projects left. The Headworks project located at the front end of the plant that removes the heavy grit and screens the plant are being completely redone. And here's a picture of the grit facility. If you drive down Akron Pencil Road, you'll see this sticking out of the ground. It's a huge structure to house the screens, remove the grit, and they're also replacing the bridge that goes across. We need to point this out because this is not a consent decree project, but it's an asset management project that had to be done. It was facilities at the wastewater plant that had to be upgraded and replaced. And this all kind of goes into our affordability calculation, is there's other work that has to be done in the sewer system that's not required in the consent decree that we have to keep up with. And this is another one of those benefits, ancillary benefits. This is next to the Ohio Canal where it discharges into the main outfall sewer. And this is what the Little Cuyahoga River looked like before the project, and this is after, before they planted the trees. And you get a chance to go down there. This is right, the towpath is right up here. What a phenomenal restoration this project was. And you can see the ripples in the water as it comes down, creating this fantastic habitat. And we were able to create a little outlook right here off of the towpath. But you need to get out there to see this. And who would have ever imagined the Little Cuyahoga full of old broken concrete and old sewer pipes and all kinds of trash could look like this, again, right in the middle of town, right off of Howard and Cuyahoga. And that little fish in the picture came out of where the ball fields are at Forge Field. One of the guys was fishing there while he was playing baseball and caught this just right upstream from this location. I did want to mention that the Akron engineering program is going strong. I think we've got around 45 students this year that we've provided workshops and training. And this is for juniors and seniors in the Akron Public Schools. And they will actually have interns, paid internships with our consultant community. So our consultants that we've been working with to do all these projects are actually providing jobs and internships for these students. And we're really excited that we've now got Goodyear and First Energy have come on board. And Goodyear's already offered a couple of them full-time jobs, and they're helping them through college. So just a phenomenal program that continues through. Down to the meat of the topic, the amendment number 3 is the projects that are left. The Northside project and the Ohio Canal treatment facility. Northside project, this is the requirement in the consent decree, requires us to build a tunnel with a certain length and a certain volume, and required to be bid in 23 and fully operational by 26, with no overflows in a typical year. This is the initial layout of the tunnel. Here's North Hill, Cuyahoga Falls, Gorge Dam, Front Street, Cascade Valley down here. So it shows the tunnel coming right along the top of the slope. The green one is the existing sewer. Down here is Peck Road and Cascade Valley. Some of you may remember, because we did look at an integrated planning project, that we proposed actually separating the sewers instead of building the tunnel. And this shows the magnitude of some of the areas that would have been separated. We went through the analysis, we redid our modeling, updated our modeling, and it actually ended up that the costs were starting to exceed our estimates significantly, and the challenges of constructability of separating those two areas became greater. And you can see the cost savings of either the original tunnel or the right-sized tunnel are significantly lower. And the difference even between the two tunnels is around $40 million. So a decision was made. We did get EPA to agree on all our new modeling that was done. But because of those changes and challenges, we decided to go back and actually recommend doing a right-sized tunnel. So through this planning process, we did decide that this wasn't going to work, but we did determine that we no longer needed to do a 24-foot tunnel, that we could meet and exceed the same performance requirement with a smaller tunnel. And that became our recommendation is to do a right-sized tunnel, 16-foot tunnel, that meets and exceeds the performance criteria with still no overflows in the typical year. And we fully demonstrated that with our updated modeling, that the right-sized tunnel is warranted, and this shows some of the benefits. Almost $40 million in project costs. It eliminates construction issues with a larger tunnel, less disruption in the neighborhood in the park, generates less spoil, and we've also looked at separating rack 34 area, that much smaller area. If you look at the diagram here, go back one more, you can see 34 is a lot smaller. We actually determined we could do a significantly smaller shaft on the tunnel by separating this little area. So we've actually proposed to do the right size tunnel along with this separation, and showed that it's still economically feasible and more cost effective. So that's the proposal for the north side tunnel. When I say it meets and exceeds criteria, those of you on Zoom can probably see this graph better than in the presentation, but it shows how we evaluate the tunnels. And what we did is looked at the 16-foot tunnel and the required 24-foot tunnel, and it actually shows in the typical year almost up to the 1.25 year storm, which is about 1.5 inches rainfall in a 3-hour period, which is a pretty good storm. We can actually provide treatment up to this level when we're only required to this level with the 16-foot. So that's how we're saying we're meeting and exceeding the performance criteria. Unfortunately, US EPA believes the larger tunnel is in the consent, that's what you have to do. And we're trying to convince them that the performance criteria dictates no overflows in a typical year. It shouldn't matter what size the tunnel is. If we do it with a 16, we should be able to do it with a 16. And that's really the basis of our dispute right now with them. The mayor briefly mentioned the dispute resolution that we're in, and this gives you kind of the whole dispute resolution process. There's a specific portion of the consent decree that provides for these disputes and how we go through them. And initially we're going through an informal dispute resolution, which lasted, it was extended once, and then we agreed to an extension of another 19 days, which actually gets us to tax day. April 15th was the end of that informal dispute resolution. Since it's not resolved, the city of Akron has 30 days to ask US EPA for a formal dispute resolution, which is basically a white paper that we submit to them stating what our case is, and we have to submit that prior to May 15th. That then starts a formal dispute resolution, and again, this is just with EPA and Department of Justice. And then they have 45 days to respond back to us. If they're still not in agreement with us after that 45 days, we file a motion in court, in federal court, and we have to do that within 15 days. So you can see that gets us to a time period of sometime in mid-July, when if we don't have agreement, we would be going to federal court with this dispute, and then we finally meet the court signal in regards to how that's finally resolved. But right now we're in this 30-day period for us, and we don't have to take all 30 days for us to notify EPA of formal dispute resolution, and then that starts this 45-day period, which puts us into July to go to court. This has been discussed with EPA, and we've provided them all kinds of information on the treatment at the end of the Ohio Canal Tunnel. And this isn't part of the dispute resolution yet, because EPA hasn't given us their answer. But this requires us to build a treatment facility at the end of the tunnel to treat 7 overflows at a volume of about 190 million gallons a year. What I like to call, we went through this and did a reality check as to whether that should still be required to have that treatment. And I'm going to quickly go through some of these to tell you the status of them as to why we don't think that treatment facility is required anymore. And the one I want to highlight is what they call the total maximum daily load. and I was warned not to get too technical with the acronyms, but basically what this is Ohio EPA reviewed all of the discharges of bacteria into the Cuyahoga River. Then they allocated certain loads of that bacteria to all the sources. And the source coming from Akron with our highway treatment facility, and get this, is 0.03% of the load into the river on a daily basis. And this shows all the other sources of bacteria into the river. This, you can't even show it. Tiny little slice shows this blowout that shows this blue area at 0.03%. So if we didn't do that project, that little slice would be 0.11%. So less than 1% loading, less than the 0.08% difference. We're really saying that it's not justified to provide an over $100 million facility. Some of the other things that go in with that, because of the tunnel that we built is performing better than anticipated, we've actually gone from 7 overflows down to 3 overflows per year projected. And we lowered the annual volume from 191 to 100, which makes this number even lower when you look at how well the tunnel's performing. When they were requiring treatment, it was 7 overflows and almost 200. And now we're down to 3 overflows. Running through those things around that list that I showed you previously, EPA also has a category they call a presumptive approach that with all other communities, and most other communities, if you're at 4 to 6 overflows per year or 85% in capture, you're meeting your requirements. We've shown we're going to be at 0 overflows everywhere in the system except for one location would have 3 overflows, which is significantly better than 4 to 6 overflows per year. We did a cost-effective analysis that showed what we call the knee of the curve that tells you when your cost now exceeds the benefit. And that cost benefit shows 3 overflows at every one of our overflows, where we're at 0, and 3 at this location at the tunnel, of which we're saying meets and exceeds the knee of the curve. The difference, as I pointed out on that TMDL, is 0.8% difference. We meet and exceed the design criteria of the OSIP tunnel from that 7 to 3 and 191 to 100 million gallons. What I'd love to point out, and I think I've showed you guys before, was the water quality and the biology in the river. The Little Cuyahoga and Cuyahoga River are meeting and exceeding their biological standards. In other words, the fish and bugs that live in the river are doing fantastic. When they go in there and sample for them, they are meeting and exceeding almost in every location in regards to what standards they set. So based on this reality check, along with all the issues of building this facility, which would be a huge facility, down right below the neighborhood next to the towpath trail, and just because of the cost, it would only go twice a year. Basically, we're talking about over $30 million per overflow, per 3 overflows per year, $30 million, which we definitely feel is excessive. Sewer rates, this is one of our reality checks also. We increased rates 269% several years ago, back in 2012 and 2013. They have not increased since then, which put us up here at the highest rates in the state until just very recently Cleveland just passed some rate increase, and they now exceed us. But all the other large communities in Ohio are significantly lower than our sewer rates. And generally, we're looking at almost 2.5% median household income goes towards their sewer rate. And in the lower 20 percentile of median household income for the city of Akron, they are almost up to 10% of their income, which is just outrageous. Almost 10% of their income goes towards the sewer. And we're really saying that it's always been a high burden. It remains a high burden, and it's unaffordable, even with the approval of this cementory. To sum up real quick, a lot of this information we saw in the very first slide. Akron will be capturing or treating over 99% of our wet weather flow, which is phenomenal. We'll be reducing the number of CSOs so over 99%. Again, the project is complete. We've successfully incorporated green infrastructure. We believe even with the cementatory, it's still unaffordable, but we feel it's less unaffordable. And one thing, the very thing I would note that I didn't talk about at the very end, our sewer system is really what we call a smart sewer. We have meters and level sensors throughout the whole system that actually tells us how the system performs every time we have a rainfall. And we're able to optimize our storage tanks in the tunnel, and we'll be able to optimize this new north side tunnel. Every time it rains, we optimize our system, and it gets better and better in the amount that we can control. And it's called a real-time control system. And we've shown tremendous success with that program. And so if it only rains in part of the city, the north part, we can store all the flow in the southern part and then treat the northern part, or vice versa. So it really has, again, our operators have done a fantastic job of implementing this. Every time it storms, they're looking at their charts to see, well, where should we send the wastewater? Where should we store the wastewater? How much can we treat? Do we need to activate more treatment facilities down to water reclamation facility? So the takeaways, and I think you're well aware of this, Akron is committed to Clean Water Obligations Consent Decree 100%. We agree with meeting our obligations. We just feel that there's some ways we could do it smarter and more cost effectively. We're committed to our mission statement of Akron Waterways Renewed. We're committed to ensuring that the disadvantaged communities benefit equitably from the investment that's going on, and the mayor will get into a lot of that with Justice 40 in the near future. Through the integrated planning, we're estimated about $140 million savings through this third amendment. And the third amendment, obviously, this right side tunnel for north side and eliminating the remote treatment facility. Akron Waterways Renewed restored the path forward, the smart investment and cost-effective improvements for water quality. The fact that our sewers get smarter every day and will continue to get smarter every day. And again, making sure it's affordable for the most vulnerable residents in Akron. We really are looking for your support on the north side tunnel for the right side sewer, and also for eliminating the Ohio Canal Tunnel treatment facility at that $140 million savings. And I just want to wrap up in our communications. A lot of you have participated in this in the past. We are returning to the Blue Heron Homecoming down at the Cascade Valley. All the community centers are getting excited. We're trying to get all the kids available to come out there. We had a fantastic time the last time we met down there. Unfortunately, the river was a little high, so we couldn't do some of the river activities, but we're hoping we can do it this year. But you definitely need to get this on your calendars to be down there. We're looking for a great time for the Blue Heron Homecoming again, coming back. So with that, that's all the formal part of the presentation. I apologize for taking so long, but as you know, it's a huge program, and it's been a lot of years. Tremendous success that we're very proud of, and we really want to continue that success with this third amendment. So with that, we can defer to any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Selman, and I think you did a good job for over $1 billion project of being able to cover it in such a short period of time. So at this time, I do see a hand from Ms. Holland, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Mr. Zellman. This is truly fascinating, and it's just a magnificent project that I've applauded every step of the way, long before I imagined I'd be sitting in this chair. You know, our water is our most essential resource, and I really appreciate everything that the city has done to improve the quality of our water, not just for us, but for future generations. There was a slide that you shared several minutes ago that was a kind of a pie chart that showed that in terms of current water quality, that overflow represents something like at or under 1% of, is this ringing a bell?
Well, yeah, if you're talking about the total maximum daily, this one?
Yep. And something caught my eye. I have a couple of questions, but this is the first one. 99% of the MDL is attributed to runoff.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd like to know runoff from what?
A lot of it is obviously upstream of Akron. A lot of it is agricultural, septic systems, storm discharges, direct runoff just from properties and roadways. But it shows when they allocated the loads to figure out what loads are being contributed. This is the loading that was really unaccounted for, and it's, I'll say, direct runoff. It's not piped, so there's not a physical pipe that's discharging it. So a lot of it is runoff just from farm fields and what gets in ditches and septic systems.
So we're picking up responsibility for that as well.
No, we're saying we're not responsible for that.
No, and I would agree with you.
We're responsible for this little sliver right here, and
Gotcha.
We've done more than our share to take care of that little sliver.
Gotcha, and my point exactly. I want to make sure that I understand so that I can help residents understand procedurally where we are at. If I'm clear on this, and please stop me if I get it wrong, right now, during this period of time, you are hoping for some sort of dialogue with Ohio EPA and US EPA, either or both, in which the proposal for reducing the size of that pipe and elimination of the requirement of this other station, where there would be some agreement that in fact these two conditions are unnecessary, and then all parties would go before the court and seek court approval of an amendment to the consent decree. Is that correct?
Yeah, just the first part, we've been in communications with US EPA, Ohio EPA, Department of Justice now, well, continuously. I mean, it's almost at least once a month, sometimes a couple times a month. And we've been actually talking about the specific amendment for almost a year. And what we got into this dispute resolution piece was we finally realized we cannot get agreement, and they finally said no. And since then, we entered into this dispute resolution piece. So what we're going to be doing is coming up with, through the website and through communications from the mayor's office, letters of support, surveys, polls, those kind of things, to show support from the community towards our third amendment. And we're hoping to influence US EPA at this point. I mean, they're the ones right now that we need to influence, and show them that there is community support for this. People are in agreement with it. And, you know, we'll come up with the usual, I'll say form letters, that position statements that people can support. And I'll put it out there that, you know, we'll be available to come to your ward meetings now that things have been freed up, to come and give presentations, because I love doing the round trip. I know it's kind of funny because I know the police officers that come to all the meetings kind of get tired of the presentation, but we can come to the ward meetings to present this information to the residents. But we're going to be looking for support in letters and polls and online petitions, all kinds of things. And that'll all be coming out in the next few weeks. But at this point, we're looking to influence EPA, US EPA. Ohio EPA is in agreement with us, which shows quite a bit of success in keeping them involved in the program. When it gets filed in court, then the court will actually, if it gets to Federal Register, there'll actually be a formal submittal of letters of support. And that's actually where we come to council and hopefully get a resolution of support. So we'll be laying out a whole process over the next couple of weeks as to how the residents can get involved.
Terrific, thank you. That was exactly what I was getting at. Consent decrees.
Sorry for the long answer.
No, necessary long answer. Consent decrees, of course, almost always have a for the public good aspect to them. And so the court will be interested in knowing what the community thinks. And, do let us know exactly how we can support this. And I sure appreciate this. And I'd like to raise my hand and say, yes, please come talk to Ward 1. Thank you.
Yes, and then keep in mind that the public good also involves the affordability of those that they can at least afford it. And,
Absolutely.
and
Could not agree more.
we are looking then for whatever the infrastructure funding that may be coming down the road, whatever opportunities may be available through revolving loan funds and that kind of thing.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tillman, for that report. You know, every time I hear about this CSO project, I become more impressed with all the work that you've done. And then to see all these examples of things you've learned along the way and ways that you've diversified the different parts of the project. And I guess my question to you would be, if we don't support what you're suggesting, I can't imagine anybody having an alternative that would be better. So I can't even imagine why we wouldn't support what you're doing, especially after showing all the success you've had throughout these years. Because when you first came to us with this, I had not a clue what you were talking about. But over the years, as you presented this information to us over and over again, it appears that you've had tremendous success. And to hear you talk about it, and I love the fact that you are just raving about the work that your staff and you and the others have done. I just love that. So thank you very much for your work, and I love the presentation.
Thank you. And when you do go down to the water reclamation facility, I cannot say enough for the operators down there. They are some of the most professional people in the world, how they operate that plant, and they did a phenomenal job during this construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. I see your hand.
Thank you, Chairman. The question, Pat, is this is the consent decree from 2002, correct? That we're asking for the third amendment?
2014.
The 2014 consent decree?
Yeah, we started in 2009. The consent decree was filed in 14.
Okay, because I did see one here. I believe it was, that was whenever the LTCP was engaged. I guess the thing of it is the inflexibility that we're seeing to a certain extent here, because the technologies change, and the more we do in terms that, just like you mentioned, that the more events that we have, the more we learn, and the smarter the system that was developed is becoming, and therefore we're learning more along the way as well, correct?
Yeah.
I guess the one thing too is that I think it's, I can't say enough about you, Pat, and about all of our employees and even the consultants. I mean, everyone who's been involved with this over time, as you mentioned, we're meeting and exceeding the expectations. And I guess the thing of it is that, we here on City Council, we're all leaders, Mayor, many of us cabinet members, we're all leaders. It's going to be time for us to lead now. Now is our time to lead, because we have got to rally our community to send a huge message to Washington, D.C., that us here in Akron, and especially the poorest of us, some of us can afford this, fortunately, but many, many folks cannot, and they've got to make decisions. They've got to make decisions between paying for health care and paying a sewer bill. And this is the fight that we've had for a long time now. And we're close. I mean, 92% complete. And again, exceeding and meeting those expectations. And so we really got to pull together here, pull the community together, and do all that we can to support our utility bureau here, and ultimately us. And I just we'll be waiting for the leadership to give us good guidance in terms of rallying that community. And Pat, again, thank you so much. I know you've lived with this project most of your career as it started years and years ago. And I appreciate all your effort and all the city employees who's lived with this for so long.
Yeah, Councilman, the one thing, to put it the simplest way is I can think, the dispute right now, when we set in a consent decree, we had performance criteria with no overflows in a typical year. That required a 24-foot tunnel. We have one of the most sophisticated models in the country for North Hill. That model showed we now only need a 16-foot tunnel. EPA says, well, it says 24 in a consent, that's what you're going to build. But the performance criteria shows we only need 16. And that's the whole crux of the dispute, is the fact that we think that the performance criteria that originally set the 24-foot should continue to set the criteria. Now we only need the 16 because we've significantly improved our modeling. And that's really the bottom line of this dispute right now.
Well, and I got to tell you, President Obama had it right in 2015. Whenever they opened it up, and some of us on council weren't here at the time, but whenever they opened it up from the gray to green, just like over there on Merriman, and just like on the east side, I believe, where, initially those proposals that was in, I believe, the consent decree was that we're going to be gray. Right. We're going to build these pipes. Thank goodness for the consultants and for you guys and for everybody in the Utilities Bureau that, said, there's a different way of doing this. So we learned from that, and fortunately, again, in 2015, we were able to amend and change and come in with a different proposal that not only saved taxpayer money, ratepayer money, but it also was a greener solution. And so that's the, I guess, the frustrating part is that, as I mentioned, whenever these consent decrees are initially, entered into, we learn along the way, and technologies change, and ideas, and we evolve, and that flexibility is, or whenever there's inflexibility, I guess, is the frustrating part.
Yes, sir.
Again, thanks, Pat.
Pat, thank you so much for everything that you do, and I was talking with one of the staff earlier. I said, I'm just thankful that Pat Selman hasn't retired mid-project here, so we're thankful that you're still around, and I look forward to whatever City Council can do to support. Thank you for your presentation. I do not see any other hands. Anybody in council and chambers here? All right, very good. Thank you, Pat, and look forward to working with you more here in these coming weeks. And
thank you. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Little, thank you. Make sure and express, our special thanks to the team there. And it is now, what time is it? It is 3:51, and we will adjourn. And Budget and Finance will begin in about 30 seconds. All right, it is 3:52, and we'd like to call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. And let me see here, I believe we have everyone present. Yes, we do. All right, could I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion to accept.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our first item that we're going to look at here is this is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into an agreement or agreements without the formality of bids with Amazon and WB Mason for the purchase of miscellaneous supplies and small dollar purchases used by various divisions and departments of the city for a period of 1 year, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are two suppliers that we've been using to purchase low-dollar supply type items. So we've actually been using WB Mason for a number of years, and recently with the implementation of Workday, we're also able to add on Amazon and incorporate some kind of, direct purchase functionality right through the Workday software in order to purchase these small dollar items. So previously the city maintained an actual storeroom on the 5th floor of City Hall where we would stock up on office supplies and things like that. That just became kind of a tedious process. We had to have kind of an internal billing system, and with the quick delivery that you're able to get through vendors like WB Mason and Amazon, and the functionality that we're able to add through Workday, we decided that it was just an easier thing, quicker, better for our departments, more cost-effective to implement these punch-out catalogs through Workday rather than maintain a storeroom. So this legislation authorizes us to continue to use those vendors.
Excellent, thank you. Questions or comments? All right, consent agenda be okay?
Yes.
Do I have a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We'll see that item is placed on the consent agenda. And last but not least, we do have an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of advertising for bids with vSoft Consulting Group, ServiceNow, for service and maintenance of the citywide help desk ticketing application and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is our ticketing mechanism that is used by our IT department for handling, troubleshooting, various computer problems. So when someone has a computer issue, they contact our IT department utilizing a ticket in this software. We previously were doing this kind of in cooperation with the county, but have recently implemented our own installation of this, and we're kind of reconfiguring it to fit with the city. We were kind of using the county's configuration previously, so we now have our own installation, and this consulting vendor will help us to kind of configure the product so it works for the city of Akron the way that we have our department set up.
Okay, good. Questions from committee members or other council members that are with us? Okay, I'm assuming that the consent
is fine, yes.
Okay, do I have a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of placing this item on the consent agenda, please let me know by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we'll see that item is placed on the consent agenda. And with that, if there's no other business, we will adjourn at 3:56 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m. tonight.